We have to understand that we are living in an outside-in world. The paradigm is outside in. It's an allopathic way of thinking. It just is the way that it is. It's where people are at now. And so first have to identify that there is a paradigm.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business, so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Hey, Remarkables. Welcome back to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
Hey, you have jumped right in the middle of a powerful series on the Big Seven. The Big Seven is the 7 reasons your patients drop out of care. So if you're a note taker, man, if you're listening in the car, you want to pull over, get out that pencil and paper because we're tackling one of the big ones today. Dr. Pete, it's the workshop and the Better Results Faster workshop, which is without a doubt my most highly leveraged of these Big Seven. Man, if you want to make table talk easier, if you want to make re-exams and re-reports and recommitments easier, if you want to make patient compliance easier, if you want to drive greater referrals, man, you got to nail your Better Results Faster workshop.
I remember, Dr. Stephen, you asked me this question, or maybe it was asked on a Facebook post. It was like, if you could only do one thing in your practice, if you could only do one thing for your community and your practice in your office, what would that one thing be? And you said, and I said the same thing, was the workshop, teach the workshop, because you knew that if you could do that one thing, then everything else would rise or change because of that. That it's that important. This workshop is that important that if there was only one thing you could do, it would actually be to do this. I remember you asking that, and
yep,
it was one of those moments when it was like, it's very sobering, because for me, I actually agree 100%. The workshop is the number one thing. We talk about the X factor, and we talked about in our previous episode. By the way, if you hadn't listened to the previous episode or episodes in this series, the Big Seven, please go back and listen to it. The previous episode was an episode about table talk and how that's an X factor in successful practices. Well, this conversation actually directly influences that. So you actually cannot separate the two, Dr. Stephen. That's kind of what I feel like we were talking about, was that, table talk without the workshop, table talk with a workshop, completely different experiences. So go back and listen to that. That'll help you grasp this. But there's really 3 places probably where things are dropping off. And we talk about the patients have a life of possibility and a life of probability ahead of them. Well, the same is true of practices, right? A practice has a life of possibility and a life of probability. And so we are going to impact that, influence your retention probability by doing the workshop, increase that likelihood of retention significantly because of this. So there's really 3 kind of factors, Dr. Stephen, that I see as I'm talking to CEOs and working with CEOs and their teams. There's 3 scenarios that I see on a regular basis that are happening regarding the workshop. Number 1 is they're not doing the workshop. Okay. So that's scenario number 1, and we can unpack the reasons why. So that is a frequent subluxation. That is an issue in businesses, is that we just are not doing the workshop. So that's 1, and there's different stories, and we'll get to that. Number 2 is you're doing the workshop, but people are not attending the workshop. Okay, and that's another one, and that's why, again, I dig deep into some of the KPIs around that category, and we dig deep into that, and there's ways to solve that. And so we'll talk through some of those things here today, CEOs. And then the third is that you're doing the workshop, people are attending, but the workshop is not effective. Okay. So there's those 3 scenarios that are essentially going on here. So Dr. Stephen, I feel it would be of great value for us, for this conversation that we're having, for us CEOs, as we gather here around the fire. We're talking about workshop today.
Yeah.
So wherever you're at with your pen and your paper, let's dig into this and let's figure this out, because this is critical, mission critical subject today.
Yeah. So you've heard us say that conversion's emotional and retention's intellectual, right? So conversion is emotional. People start care based on how they feel, right? And I don't mean symptomatically, right? Or I'm saying people start care based on how they feel. Did they feel heard? Do they feel like they're in the right place? Do they feel you're going to help them get to what they want? That's why they start care. But people stay into care based on what they know, right? So we say conversion is emotional, but retention is intellectual. People stay under care based on what they know. So we call people believers in the beginning of care when they first start care, when they first convert to care. We call them believers. And that's a respectful way of addressing this situation, right? There's a scenario here where they've started care based on how they feel, not based on what they understood, right? So they don't understand anything, right? They don't understand how their body really works and how their body really heals. They don't understand the spine and the nervous system. They certainly don't understand subluxation. They don't understand the adjustment. They don't understand any intelligence, above, down, inside out, paradigms. They don't understand anything. They're believers. They believe you. They believe you're going to help them. They believe you're going to help them get what they want, right? So they're a believer. Believers are great, but they're heavy. And you got to carry them around on your back because they have lots of questions. They've got lots of doubt. They've got objections. They've got pushback. They want to do consultations on every visit, right? So we all know them. We love them, but you can sense they're just like, I just believe you. I really don't get it. I don't understand. And they're wonderful, but they're heavy. And you're limited as to how many of those you could carry, right? Understanders are weightless. So understanders, you don't have to believe in chiropractic care. You can understand chiropractic care. And when you understand chiropractic, you want chiropractic. So our job is to take the believer and turn them into an understander. And understanders are like helium balloons. You can gather them up and you could carry an infinite number of them, right? So we want to take that believer and turn them into an understander, right? And the workshop is really the pivot point. I say leverage your workshop so much that your expectation is they walk in the door a believer, they walk out the door of the workshop as an understander.
Here's a few words from our newest podcast sponsors. We're grateful for their support of the show.
Hey Doc, would you like to rest easier knowing that another set of well-trained eyes were reviewing all of your x-rays for pathology? How nice would it be to know that you have a team of expert radiologists checking your films, preparing reports, and assisting in patient management and diagnosis? Would you like to be accredited with Medicare and have all of the IT infrastructure to make the entire operation work without having to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars? Would you like to reduce costs to patients by providing a radiology service paid for via Medicare? Innate Radiology can help. Innate Radiology provides teleradiology reporting services for Australian chiropractors under Medicare. They help with the setup and management of radiology practices inside chiropractic clinics all around Australia. They coordinate the entire radiology setup and management for chiropractors, making the process easy, efficient, cost-effective, and profitable. Innate Radiology subleases the chiropractic clinic premises to operate a radiology centre within the chiropractor's office. This provides a great service, peace of mind, and a revenue stream to the chiropractic business bottom line, whilst providing a government-funded health service to the chiropractor's referred patients, reducing their out-of-pocket expense, which would otherwise incur costs. The founders of Innate Radiology are a chiropractic team who know what chiropractors want from a radiology service. They make the investment into a radiology setup positive cash flow from day one, which adds dollars to the business bottom line. To learn more, go to www.innateradiology.com.au. That's www.innateradiology.com.au.
And now let's jump right back into our conversation. Dr. Stephen, we talk about ideal patients oftentimes. And I would say that the purpose of the workshop is to create that ideal patient, right? So you are talking about believer and understander, and and this is how I see it. I look at believer, like we talk about it, as a very respectful way to identify someone in their journey. Okay. We talk about we're in the belief shaping business, but they're a new believer. Okay. And then there's the understanding arc. So there's an arc of believing and there's an arc of understanding. Okay. And so this is where everything kind of comes together. That's where understanding the process from day 0 through day 1, day 2, day 3 is really a belief shaping process. Okay. That's why we call it a remarkable conversion, because there's a lot of things that we're actually accomplishing here. And anybody who's worked with us understands when they look deep inside of the remarkable system, they're like, man, this is legit. Well, yeah, because there's an arc of the belief, because I'm going from a seeker to becoming a believer. So I'm a new believer and I'm going through this process. And then I go through this understanding arc. Okay. And I don't know, Dr. Stephen, if the arc of understanding ever ends, because I have not yet had mine end. I continue to learn and grow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was listening to a recent interview with Dr. Heidi Havoc. And I'm like, my brain gets blown again about the power of chiropractic, the adjustment, just the amazing, impact, and I'm just like, wow, I'm continuing to get greater and deeper understanding. So the understanding never ends. Okay. We're always growing in our understanding. We're always developing that arc of understanding. But the purpose of the workshop is to create your ideal patient. So you're creating them, right?
That's right.
And so that's really important. So a couple of things, that we want to focus on in the workshop. Number one is the paradigm shift. We have to understand that we are living in an outside-in world. The paradigm is outside in. It's an allopathic way of thinking. It just is the way that it is. It's where people are at now. And so we first have to identify that there is a paradigm, there is a belief, there is a paradigm, and there is a new paradigm. Okay, so we're introducing a new paradigm and how important that is to change the way that people live their life. And that's what leads to breakthrough, okay, is having that paradigm shift. Another thing with the workshop is you must be adding value to people. When people come to your workshop, if I say, Dr. Stephen, come to the workshop, I don't want people rolling their eyes. I don't want my team kind of like half-assing it, like, oh, you got to get to the workshop because Dr. Pete wants us to get you to the workshop. No. Right. You do not want to miss this workshop. Actually, if you have family and friends, you should bring them. You definitely want to come to this one. You're going to want to be here. Tuesday night, 6:00. I highly recommend you bring as many people with you, actually. That kind of experience. Like, you want that type of an energy around it from your team. Like, oh yeah, do not miss a workshop. You want your team coming into the back of the workshop, even though they can go home and just kind of sitting down and just kind of taking it in.
Yeah.
I like taking it in on Tuesdays. I like listening. I like to get refreshed. Like, how could I walk out when I was listening to what he was saying? I just had to kind of go into the back and stand in the back of the room and just listen. Like, that's workshop, folks. That's the energy here, guys. Do you feel it? Do you feel what I'm saying? Like, this type of a culture, this type of an energy, this type of a moment. It's like, man, do not miss the workshop. You're adding value to humanity. This is everything, right? This is so powerful. And trust me, when you add value, when you do this, when you value it, when you feel it, when it's in you and it comes through you, man, people are you can see it, the shifting going on, the eyes, the scales coming off. Like, you watch it right in front of your eyes. So you're adding value in the workshop. It's another purpose. And you must do that so that you help them get the better results that they want even faster. And then the third is it actually produces referrals. It really does. And some amazing opportunities that are going to birth out of this one event, this one moment in a person's life, in this one thing, will change their life forever. So powerful, Dr. Stephen. I love the workshop, man. And I can't just emphasize enough how critically important it is.
I wore my neck fix t-shirt today, right? So because I lofted a question out to my family. We were all out last night. My extended family, we were all out to dinner last night. And I lofted out a question like, I need something, a new series to watch. It's like, I don't watch television really. But I love movies and I love series, right? So I'm like, hey, does anybody have a good series? And man, the table lit up. Like, Netflix, you got to go on this one. And watching everybody talk about what I should be watching and promoting different series, I'm like, that's how people should be talking about your workshop, right?
Mm.
That's remarkable. That's the term remarkable means notable, means worthy of comment. People should be talking about it. Your message should be the talk of the town. Now, I don't want you to shoulder this burden of like, oh my gosh, you guys, I don't know if I'm capable of creating or writing that workshop or putting together or delivering a workshop that has that kind of impact. Like we don't want you to feel like you're alone on this. If you need help with this, let us know. We have a phenomenal workshop that we've created. We have great coaching and training around that. We work with Roberto Monaco on our influenceology and our persuasive and influential communication trainings. And we have the PowerPoint decks. We have all of that. If you need help with that, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you with that. So don't let the content dragon be the reason you don't do this. It's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say whatever. Just don't do it. If you make up your mind that this is critically important to do, we can equip you to do it really, really well. Right. But that's a conversation for a different day. Right now, we're talking about how critically important it is to do this so that you create clarity for consistent and regular chiropractic care over a lifetime. This is one of the big seven. One of the big seven reasons your patients drop out of care is because you're not delivering that message. There has to be a message inside you that you have to let out every week, right? So this message includes those three things. It's shifting and changing belief systems. Your paradigm, this is where you're shaping and changing their paradigm. This is where you're introducing this concept. So they start thinking different, right? It's not the end of the job. It's the beginning of the job. You're just starting getting them to think differently. Listen, your table talk's not that good. Okay. Your report of findings was not that good. They weren't even really listening to, they weren't available. They weren't trusting you yet. Right. So none of us are that good. Okay. So they're at a place now where they trust you and they're listening and they're available to you. Now they're going to let you in. They're available. You're going to be able to start challenging the way they're thinking and shaping a new way of thinking. Right. So you've got to address the paradigm. You've got to create the space and time to do that. Right. So that's number one. Okay. If you do this well, every visit after this gets easier. If you don't do this, every visit gets harder. Subsequent visits just keep getting harder over time, right? So you got to shape and change their belief system. Number two is you've got to equip them to get better results faster, right? You've got to teach them what they need to know. 12 things that everybody needs to know to be healthy, right? That's the dirty dozen. That's the bulk. That's the body of the content, right? You got to teach them the 12 things everybody needs to know to get their health back. And you teach them how to do it through the three-legged stool, right? Adding your adjustments in rhythm, breaking your bad habits, and adding the specific exercises to strengthen your spine so you hold your adjustments. You're introducing the concept of here's what you do in this. This is your role in this partnership, right? So you're introducing all of these concepts, and all of these concepts will live in your table talk, okay, as reminders. So we introduce and teach the concepts at the workshop, and that makes table talk easy. So if you find that table talk is hard for you, it's hard to do, I bet you're not doing workshop, or people are not attending your workshop, or your workshop message is off. Okay. So you have to see how these two dovetail. Workshop drives table talk. Okay. And if you don't do workshop, table talk is hard. And if it's hard, you're going to fatigue. And if you fatigue, you're going to stop doing it. It's going to feel awkward, right? So we talked about setting expectations with patients from the beginning. Every time you hear, I'm going to teach you something about your role in health and healing. We talked about table talk itself and the importance of doing it consistently and establishing that expectation and following through with what you said you were going to do. Workshop is where you're teaching them the concepts that make it easy. Okay. It makes this much easier. My metaphor for this, Dr. Pete, is imagine every new patient is like a tire at the bottom of a dirt road that has a hill right in front of you, right? And that tire is laying on its side, and it's hot and it's dusty and it's dirty. And you come up to that tire and you do the old big clean, right? The clean and jerk. You do the clean that tire upright, and you get that thing standing upright and get it starting rolling up the hill. That's the workshop. You get that thing, your hands are on it, you're running that thing up the hill, you get it rolling. And as you roll that tire, that hill starts to become less and less and less of an incline. Okay. So that tire is rolling nicely. Table talk is now just running next to that tire and tapping it and keeping it going. Tapping it and tapping it. And the more you do that, the more consistent you are, the longer you do that, that incline of that hill just really starts to decrease. It's never flat and it's never downhill. It's always got a slight incline, but you're just running next to that tire, tap, 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 tap. And the workshop is what gets that tire upright and rolling. Table talk, it's easy because you just jog in next to it, tapping, 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 and reminding them of the concepts that you taught them at the workshop. If you do not do workshop, every visit feels like you have to clean that tire upright again. And that's a lot of work.
I love that analogy, Dr. Stephen. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I've lifted some of those big, heavy tires before. And I feel that and then maybe it's because I've not done that in the practice at times. And I felt the weight of every single time. Like you said, I loved how you said that. If you do this well, every visit that follows will get easier. If you don't do this, every visit gets harder. And I've experienced both sides. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, after also spending, years and years adjusting hundreds of people a day, 1,000 patients visits a week myself, and with my associates and doctors as well, that there's no question about the fact that the people that attended the workshop, those people were much, much more likely, number one, to stay. They were much more likely to refer. They were also just way better, get better results. They did, because so much of results that I found in healthcare, so much of results actually comes back to the mind, comes back to beliefs. We talk about, so what do we say? We say beliefs shape behaviors, behaviors shape outcomes, right? So when you think about the actual structure of the spine, we talk about traumas, thoughts, toxins, we talk about the things that actually impact subluxation. We talk about the things that influence the health of a nervous system and spine. Well, when you start really shaping someone's belief and they start thinking and behaving different, their spine actually changes. It's so amazing. Like you lay your hands on enough people for long enough to realize, wow, how important belief is for actually impacting the outcomes, the results that people get. It's so important. And so, this is critical on every front, on every side. Couple things I just wanted to emphasize, Dr. Stephen, as we, drive this point for, we know that you're a CEO, you're listening to this podcast. We understand that you're leading a business and you're really thinking about scaling, creating more scalability and durability. This part of your business model, we talked about that. This is a business model. This is a part of your model. This is mission critical. So there's a couple keys to the model. I want to talk about a little bit of the model. Like, how do I do this well? We're not going to get into like how to deliver a great workshop. Like you said, we've got tremendous resources for you to do that. And Dr. Stephen, you and I probably would both right now just be happily give a workshop because we love to do it. But there's a couple of things. Number one is the workshop must be important to you. And when I say you, I mean you plural. Okay. It starts with you, but as the CEO, no longer is it about you only. So it's we, right? So it's important to us as a clinic, as a business, as a team. So that's the first thing, is that the workshop must be important to everyone on the team, all the CAs, all the docs, everybody on the team. And if there's any confusion about why, stop right there and do not proceed until we fix that. Because it might not be the right person for the team, right? So first of all, everybody has to be on the same page that this is important as a team. It starts with that. It starts with you and in team. It must be important to you. Number two is, and we found this, is consistency. So it happens every week. Okay. That's the second thing, is that there's a consistent appointment. It's already booked in the schedule on repeat from now until forever. Right. So it's happening. It's not a question of whether we're having a workshop this week, right? We look at each other. Are we doing a workshop this week? And here's Dr. Stephen. I'm going to make this point. If no one was there, I still did the workshop. Dr. Peter, you saying you spoke to an empty room? Yeah. I've spoken to an empty room. I've spoken to a room where I wrote the names of the people who were supposed to be there and put it on the seats and spoke to those people. I spoke to my mentors. I put them in there because I knew if I wasn't speaking to people, my mentors were in the room. If they were listening to me, would they say, Pete, did you tell them the truth? Did you give them what they needed? So consistency, folks. Even if you're speaking to an audience of one, it's as if you were speaking to a theater full of people. Imagine BJ and Dee Dee and Franson and all these guys are in the room. How are you going to show up? Are you ready? Have you prepared? Are you ready to go? Happens every week. That's the second. Number 3, it's got to be mandatory for all your new patients. None of this. I don't have a card a file that says option. There's no option card. It's everybody goes to the workshop. Okay. And we have all sorts of different ways to help you make sure that happens from a scripting perspective and just expectations and agreements. We will help you there. But that is it's mandatory that everyone attends. It either is or it isn't. And we can quickly know if it isn't because there's not a repercussion if they don't come. Right. But if there is a consequence, if people don't come to the workshop, then I know you mean business. Number 4, the workshop itself must be compelling. If it's compelling to you, doesn't guarantee it's going to be compelling to everybody else, but it'll more likely be compelling if it is compelling to you. So I always like getting feedback from a few people. Number 1 is myself. So when's the last time you recorded yourself and listened to yourself back? That's a real quick way to audit the compellingness of your workshop. Listen to yourself and be like, yeah, I wouldn't like that either. I would not attend my workshop. Or the first part was pretty good, but then it gets real dry and my end is super flat, right? That kind of thing. So to be compelling, regularly audit your own workshop, meaning listen back. I always invite somebody like my wife into the workshop because she's my biggest fan. Now, critic, what? I'm not sure which one, but she'll tell me what it is. She'll let me have it. Also, CAs, bring them in. Guys, give me feedback on the workshop. If you got your associates doing it, you sit in and attend their workshop. You should be doing that regularly. Number 1, if I'm an associate and my CEO's in there, that's a privilege. That's an honor. That's amazing. And the fact that you're going to give them feedback, amazing, right? So setting up a culture of being compelling means we're listening to ourselves. We're giving feedback as a team. We're embracing this as an organization. That's huge. And then the last thing is we must be adding value to people, right? You've got to add value. And again, a lot of this comes from listening back, looking through your deck, looking through what are we teaching them? Is this actually adding value to people and ensuring that they do? And the best way to know if you added value to people, guess how to do it? On their next visit. Check in. Hey, what was the biggest takeaway you had from the workshop, Stephen? Last night or Tuesday, you came to the workshop. Tell me, what was the biggest takeaway? Number 1 thing. I'll tell you, and listen, see what he says. I'll tell you what, you'll know if you got value. That's one way. There's lots of other ways to measure value, but that'd be my immediate response. I always just did that. Right.
And I'll tell you what, Dr. P, you better know what you want that response to be.
Yeah.
Like when you ask that question on that next visit, when I'd ask a patient, so I'm curious, what was your takeaway? Right. So I knew that what I wanted them to say. Okay. And here's the thing. I reverse engineered that all the way through the workshop. So my purpose for my workshop is I wanted to make sure everybody walked out of the workshop understanding why every child should get their spine and nervous system checked by a chiropractor throughout their life. Okay. I wanted people to walk away with that understanding. Like that was what I wanted their takeaway to be. Okay. So I reverse engineered that to make sure that that's what a patient would say to me. And regardless of what they said, there was, that was really interesting about the statistics about how unhealthy America is, or I'm shocked at how much money we spend on healthcare, or wow, I never knew that about addiction, or wow, it was wild that I didn't know that my spinal cord was inside my spine, or man, it's really cool to think that the body is actually intelligent. I always thought that, but you put it to words. Whatever they said didn't matter. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's great. What about the kid thing? What about the kids? What do you think of that? And if I was talking to Pete's got 15 kids, I'd be like, okay, so Pete, when am I checking your kids? Right. And it was very simple for me to do that because I just spent 45 minutes making a case for why his children and all children should get their spines and nervous system checked regularly throughout their lifetime. Right. So I was so deliberate about that. I had absolutely no hesitation on asking him, so did you schedule the kids to get checked? Right. So guys, you have to be so deliberate and so intentional. And remember, remarkable doesn't imply perfect. My workshop was never perfect. I don't think I ever delivered a perfect workshop, right? So don't shoulder that burden, right? So this is not about being perfect, right? This is about you showing up and sharing your heart and your head, right? It's about showing up and being the person that moves a room. Okay. So remember, they're not going to remember what you said. They're going to remember how you made them feel. So you've got to show up and you've got to bring your passion and your certainty and your love and your compassion. I had to do that workshop every Wednesday night or my friggin' head would explode. All right. So this past year and a half, if you have not been eating what's been going on around you, just eat it up, right? And release it on Wednesday night. Right? So all the craziness, all the WTFs that you want to drop all week long as you hear what people are being told and what they're saying and what they're experiencing and what you see going on around you, let that be fuel. Just eat it, take it in, right? Take it in knowing that you're going to encapsulate it in your belly and you're going to release that on Wednesday night and you're going to bring it. Right. And you're going to bring it. And like we said, we will help you with the content. Don't worry about that. And don't feel like you have to be perfect. The message is going to resonate because it's going to be coming from above down and inside out through you. Right. And just share the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Dr. Pete, the workshop is an incredibly highly leveraged element in this big 7. We want them walking in the door as a believer, walking out the door as an understander. We call this day 4 in our 4-day true conversion process, right? Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Day 4 is the workshop. It's the last step in the conversion process, and it's the first step in the retention process.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.